there is a rate at which you can know things by linear thought process, by one thought after another thought after another thought. There is also a gestalt phenomenon of an experience of understanding how something is. This is something that is not in a sequential thought process. It is not thought itself. This is a method put forth by Ramana Maharshi, a beautiful saint in India who became realized at 17 years old, and for 50 years he stayed on Arunachala near Madras. Beautiful, beautiful being. And he taught this very simple method called Vichara Atma, meaning method of self-inquiry. Who am I? And just to roughly take you through it, I'll tell you how it works, and it takes a long time to do it, but it's simple to know how it works. He starts out and he says, you sit down and you say, who am I? And then you say, I am not this body. Now you can put the I right in the middle of your head, and then you can experience your body as object, just your torso as object. And you can sit until you can see your body like you're looking, like I was telling you about that first psilocybin experience. You see your body as object, and the I is in the middle of your head. Now I'll go through this quite rapidly, and then you can read about it on your own. And then he says, I am not the 5 organs of motion. And then he experiences his arms, and he feels the arms as object with the I in the middle of the head. I am not the legs, and he feels his legs as object. The tongue is the 3rd organ of motion. The anal sphincter is the 4th organ of motion. The genitals are the 5th organ of motion. In each case, you experience the organ of motion, and you experience it as object in relation to the I in the middle of your head. Then you say, I am not the 5 senses. Now, when you are in a room reading and there is a clock ticking, you know that you read and you don't hear the clock tick. And then you finish reading and the clock's ticking again. And the clock was ticking all the time. Your ear was hearing the clock tick, but you weren't attending to your ear hearing the clock tick. And this is an involuntary process for most people. Well, now, there are 3 things. There's the clock, there's the ear mechanism, the middle ear and the inner ear and, vestibular membrane. And then there is the awareness attending to the ear. So what you do is you develop that I becomes that place inside, and you watch the clock tick and the ear hear the clock tick. You say, I am not the ear. You don't turn it off. You merely note the ear hearing. You note the eye seeing. You note the tongue tasting. You note the nose smelling. You note the skin feeling. Then when you've done this, I am not the 5 internal organs. And then you go through watching your heart beating, circulation, respiration, digestion, excretion, perspiration. 5 inner processes that you can get hold of a little bit. Sometimes more fantasy, sometimes more real. Very slow process. Takes a while. Then you'll lose it and you'll suddenly be identified with your leg again, and you go back and say, I am not the leg. And you're going to go back, and you go at the rate you can go. Now you're down to one place, which is the I in the middle of your head, which is the thought, I am here in the middle of my head. And then the last one is the clincher. This is the mind blower, literally. It is, I am not this thought. Which thought? The thought of I am not that thought. I am in the middle of my head is a thought, and I am not that either, you see. So what happens then is your thoughts become like on the Times building, the news going by in a ticker tape, and you see your own thoughts going by, but from where? The minute you label from where, you're not that either, see, because that's another thought, which you're not. Now, if you are disciplined enough to be able to do this, and this is a very steep path, and it is the hardest method. It is similar to most other kinds of very fierce, steep paths, like Zen, for example. If you are able to do this, you extricate yourself. Remember that psilocybin experience I had, that place inside. You extricate that place from identifying with your senses, and finally identifying with your own thinking minds, because what you do is you go behind your own thoughts, so you see your thoughts as object. Now, when you do that, what you experience is very much like going through a doorway, and you enter into what is called the lowest state of samadhi. You may be able to stay there only a millisecond, or later on longer and longer time. But when you go into that state, you go into what the Sanskrit literature calls Sat Chit Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda, which I'll describe briefly to you. And this is explaining to you now where Maharaji's head is at, what Sahaja Samadhi is, what state he's in. But let me preface it by saying this, that in order to get through that doorway, you have done that method. That method is a method of using the mind to turn in on the mind. Do you see how that's done? You brought the mind down, brought it away and away and away, and then turned it in on itself and said, I'm not that either. That's that method.